Don't hate us because we're beautiful. Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here. We're continuing our look at Generation 1 1984 toys. This time around we have Sunstreaker. The Sunstreaker is the twin brother of Sideswipe, so they were naturally on the shelves together, coming out in 1984 and remaining on the shelves in 1985. They would both be discontinued in 1986. And the Japanese issues for Sunstreaker, he would get released in multiple variants. In the Car Robots toy line from Diaclone, as there would famously be a red version of him, as well as a police variant. Although one would have to wonder what police department could afford to have a Lamborghini Countach souped up for racing as part of its fleet. And of course, Sunstreaker, being a character from all the way back then, has had a few newer versions. I don't have too many in my collection, but I do have one of the more recent ones. His toy from the Earthrise line. Which takes a little creative liberties with the car mode, but still gives the general impression of being something similar. Now, a special note here regarding Sideswipe is the fact that when the mold was issued out into Europe in the late 80s for the 1990s Classics line to be released in Europe, sometime during that, when it was sent back to Takara, the mold was either lost or damaged beyond repair. So that more or less means that after 1990, you would never be able to find a Sideswipe like this. Hasbro and Takara have both deemed that the mold is unrepairable and it's not worth the money to either of them to remake the toy in this form. So basically, after 1990, this version of Sunstreaker ceases to exist. So, if you want a version of Sunstreaker that looks like this, you gotta buy a vintage one, and it's gonna cost you. Another interesting bit on the original Japanese toy was that the launchers were placed here in his arms, and they were working launchers. You could launch his fists, you could launch the rockets, and you could launch these yellow boosters out of him from there as well. Especially after you push the plastic piece down inwards to extend the rod. So for any of you that may have been wondering what that was for, well, that's what it was. So let's take a look now at Sunstreaker's accessories. We'll start with these boosters. So like I said, when you pulled this down, this meant it could be fired from the launchers on his arms, giving him another option for weapons. Seems kind of silly, but hey, it might have been a fun gimmick back in the day. But of course, it also would have meant these pieces would be even rarer to find today, because how many of them would get lost? Then again, we just stick them in his shoulder there, and they just ride in there. They don't really fit securely, so This kind of defeats the purpose anyway, no matter how you look at it. Then next up we have his hands. He has a right hand, and of course, separately I have a left hand. Pretty generic looking fists. And then lastly, Sunstreaker has 3 of these rather long missiles. Right here's the other 2. They're all done up in chrome, so that's something you'll have to look for, especially if you're particularly fussy about that. Articulation-wise, Sunstreaker is, like many of them, restricted to the arms. His arms can go back and forth like that at the shoulder. They can be rotated at the elbow, like that, and his arms bend at the elbow. And of course, like we were pointing out, since he's got the engine there for the head, that seems to be how it's setting him up for him to have had the jetpack originally, but for some reason it was written into his brother's bio. Okay, to transform Sunstreaker, he's somewhat more complicated than many of the others. First thing we do is we're going to start by shifting the chest upwards a bit so that we can also fold his head down. We got to get everything to slide forwards on him. So basically we got to raise this back, fold this black bar up front. That's to be a seat for the original toy, the original Diaclone toy. And then it folds down so that it kind of hangs out in between. His arms, you'll rotate them at the elbow upwards so that we can fold them inward. And then they have holes on both sides. A lot of it depends on getting the elbow bent. You just fold them in and they connect to a little post. One goes underneath. The other one folds up and connects to a spot under his head. If they're pressed in properly, then they'll hold the arms in place. Then you can fold back this little black plastic flap, and it should just snap in. He'll come here to the front, kind of fold down his feet, push them inwards, and then slide his legs back. And then there you have it. Sunstreaker also becomes a Lamborghini Countach, but he's modified for racing and has a bigger and more exposed engine. How well does he roll on the table? He actually rolls pretty good, which is always a nice feature. Now we'll take a quick look here at his tech spec card. It's got a picture of him that matches what it would be on the front of the box. It's done up in red to show he's an Autobot. It even says it above his picture. It gives his name as Sunstreaker. His function is listed as Warrior. And they give a quote, supposedly from him, that says, "They can't beat the best." The complete egotist, Sunstreaker thinks he is the most beautiful thing on Earth. And he does. One of the episodes where they were in movies, Sunstreaker even bragged about being so beautiful. Loves his sleek styling, contemptuous of other Autobot race cars, particularly his twin Sideswipe. Fires laser-guided ground-to-air rockets and high-energy electron pulses at 300 bursts a second. Tough polymer steel skin resists artillery. Not a team player. Can be baited into dangerous situations. but is a very calm, competent, and ruthless war machine. Unless his ego gets the better of him. And now we'll look here at the grid. Normally you'd need a red decoder for this, but I can see the lines pretty good. It gives his strength as 5, his intelligence is 6, his speed is 7, his endurance is 8, his rank is 5, his courage is 7, his firepower is 7, and his skill is 7. So, despite his claims that he's the best, his scores kind of average out, really. So now we get down to my thoughts. What do I think of Sunstreaker? Well, as a character, Sunstreaker is a bit of an irritating pain, being constantly full of himself. The toy, however, I kind of like. It is a nice variant of the famed Lamborghini Countach. It's just a shame that since the mold has been damaged beyond repair, that Takara and Hasbro can't make a newer version of this classic toy. So it kind of means that a lot of the younger people of today miss out on him. Although really, when the missile launchers on him have been neutered, they're not really missing too much on him, to be honest with you folks. So unless it's one that you really want to have in your collection, I would say stick with probably a modern version of Sunstreaker, and you'll be probably just as happy with that. At any rate, that's my review of the Generation 1 version of Sunstreaker. I hope you all enjoyed it. Please do remember that if you love the content we feature on this channel, I would appreciate a like, share, and a comment, and please subscribe if you haven't done so already. This is Sparkster1701 saying I'll catch you all later.